Welcome to the Strange and Interesting Podcast, a show about folklore, the paranormal, urban legends, and pretty much anything else I happen to find strange or interesting. My name is Al, and today I'm joined by Crystal Jordan, a psychic medium, and I understand you've also done some paranormal investigation as well.
Yes. I'm not a psychic, though.
Okay, just so there's a difference between medium and psychic?
I do not claim to know the future or prophecy.
Okay, because I have heard people refer to themselves as psychic mediums, so I guess that's why. It's not something I'm really familiar with, so if I say something wrong, feel free to correct me. I will not get offended.
No, I'm just a different type of medium. I feel like I'm kind of the first of my kind because I'm actually a little bit black and white and straightforward in how I see and receive. And I hate when people come to me and ask me love advice or questions on lottery or anything. Like, I hate that so bad.
So how would you define the difference then between a psychic and a medium?
Psychic is somebody who can actually see or depict accurately the future. And it's goofy because like I said, it's weird how I see and receive because I myself view me as a skeptical medium. Very skeptical, which is weird when you talk to dead people for a living. But I have to have validation behind what I'm doing in order to claim that it is accurate myself. And I hold everybody else accountable the same way. You're
not one of those mediums who's going to insist that everything in areas paranormal. So you do leave room for the possibility that there is something else, and there could be a potentially logical explanation.
If you look at my TikTok, what I'm trying to do is give people the understanding that everything is logical. I'm very different in how I see. I believe that spirit communicates through our organic brain. Okay. Organically speaking, if we didn't have the brain and we didn't have the mental consciousness, subconscious, and unconscious, spirit wouldn't be able to connect with us at all. And so we have to be able to see the actual, what's happening around us. It's not always spirit. Sometimes it's just a figment of our imagination. Sometimes It's our brain playing tricks on us. Our brain wants to protect us. So if something is happening around us that is fearful, it's going to evoke more fear based on subconscious thought patterns. And so, there's really nothing to be scared of. I don't see demons the way that people describe that. I don't buy into any of that.
Okay. Because, I'm more one of those people who I consider myself a believing skeptic, if that makes any sense, where, I admit I love paranormal stuff. I love urban legends. I love stories about haunted houses and ghosts, but yet I've never actually had any sort of experience like that myself, which according to one guest I had many episodes ago, I probably should consider myself lucky for that.
Yeah, I think that people have more experiences than what they think they do. It's not something that stands out to them. I don't know. Like I said, I believe that we're all connected, and I don't think I'm by any means gifted in the sense that I can see and receive these invisible things that other people. I think that people have experiences all the time. We can all do it. It's just how we hone in on those things.
Okay. So actually, that was a question I was going to ask, and it sounds like you just answered it. I was going to say, do you think being a medium or ability to connect with the spirit world is something that everyone's born with, or do you think that only certain people can do it?
Well, because I think consciousness is external, and I believe that, once we're alive, obviously we have consciousness within our body. I believe that those two things have to work together, and because all of us have the same things, we all have a brain, a mind, we all work the same organic way, then all of us have that capability. I think it's how we allow ourselves to see and receive. And I think that just like other things in life, some people are going to have a harder time connecting with it than other people. Like math, for me, give me a math problem and I will screw it up every time. I cannot do math to save my life. Some people are really good at that. I am not good at the analytical. I am more good when it comes to the artistic, the creative, and all of those other things. So yes, it's just how we have to work with what we've got going on in our own life. And some people may have to work harder to be able to see those things or feel those things or be able to tap into their own energy, because that's what it takes. That's the connection, is you. But I think that every person on this planet has the capability. It's just how far can they tune into that, and how much do they want to work with it?
So you think it's something as long as you're willing to have an open mind and put in the work, anyone can learn to be a medium.
Yeah.
Okay. We've already learned a little bit about you here, but if you could maybe give us a little bit of background, specifically, when did you first find out you were a medium, and any other information you want to share along those lines?
So it's goofy because I should have known that I was a medium, and it's so stupid. I hate terms. I hate words. I just do, because my whole life I saw and heard things, and it was actually validated. There were people around me that witnessed the same things that I did, but I was always crazy. So my very first depiction of spirit took place, and my mom had the same experience. Like, I literally thought that she was inviting a girl into our house. I was 2. This is my first memory of spirit. I thought it was a play date. This girl was a wretch of a human being. She was mean. She was angry. She wanted my toys. Like, there were all sorts of things that happened with that little girl. But my mom always just kind of, like, because I was little, and it could just be my perception or perspective of the experience around me that was taking place. But it wasn't until later in life that my mom was like, yeah, I saw her too all the time, but I saw her in her death state and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, why didn't you tell me? Because I always talked about this little girl, and you always used to tell me that I was seeing things, or your imagination, or, you're always so emotional, Crystal. And then when I was in first grade, I had my first channeling experience that I didn't know was channeling, because I was 5.5, 6 years old. I talked to some girl's grandfather that had just passed away, and I got put in detention for it. So there was that took place. I was just being mean and making things up. And here we go. Crystal's making up things again. Look at her and her creative energy, but that's wrong. You can't do that. And that followed me through life. And it got to a point where, like, when I was a teenager, I want to say more around 10, I started witnessing and experiencing more darker things, scarier things. And that lasted up until I was about, 21. And then I got pregnant with my son, had my son. And then it opened back up around 26. And when I finally had to do something about it, I went to a tour at the Jackson prison in Michigan. And I was in the medical field. I was a medical assistant at the time, and I was going to school, had just started going to school to, like, start my PA stuff, because I wanted to become a PA. And so I went to this tour, and we went to, like, go into the solitary confinement area. And there was, like, this invisible wall that came upon this space. And prior to even getting there, like, I kept hearing somebody calling my name, and I was like, what is going on? I was there with my ex-husband and my son. I'm like, here it is. Like, now's the time. Now I'm having a complete psychosis moment in front of all of these people. 'Cause God, this is awful. But then we got to that area, and there was this invisible door. I could not physically walk through it. Like, I could not physically, everything inside of me told me that if I walked through that door, I was going to probably die. And everybody's looking at me, waiting for me. And I'm like, I can't do it. I don't know what's happening. Like, I cannot walk through this space. And everybody went down there. And finally, I was just like, after about 3 minutes, I was like, suck it up, Buttercup. And then I took this deep breath, and I went down there, and you had to go down these steps. And I remember going down like 4 steps, and then there's a platform, and then it went off to, like, the left. And as soon as I touched the wall, everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong. And I saw all these faces rush from the back, because it was this long corridor with these, like, little spaces where the solitary cells used to be, but they're not there anymore. Jackson Prison did them dirty when it came to historical stuff, but they took all this stuff out, and all I saw were all these faces come rushing at me. And there were 2 faces in particular that, like, there was so much anger and so much sadness and so much hurt and just confusion and pain. Just, it came at me, and I passed out.
Wow.
So while I was passed out, apparently, I was crying. I say passed out because I don't remember jack squat other than, like, that experience. But I was talking. I was saying things. They had to carry me upstairs. And then finally, I'm laying on a bench. And as I'm coming to, this lady's face is in my face. And she's like, do you have gifts? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I didn't know. I actually thought I was possessed. So on the way home, I was like, because I'm in the medical field, I know what this looks like. And I know that if I go to work on Monday and tell these people that that's the experience I had, I'm going to get a ride to a padded cell. And that's not what I thought was the experience. It felt different to me, but at the same time, it still scared the crap out of me. And so I decided I still have this email, by the way. I've kept it. That was in 2012. I sent an email out to like 150 people. It was all spiritual workers on Google. The same thing, just different names. I would take out the name, I'd put in somebody else's name. And 2 people got back a hold of me. One was Pat Longo, who ended up being my mentor, and one was from Bath, Michigan. And she was like, no, it's bad that you're having these experiences and blah, blah, blah. And when I went to go see her, it just didn't feel right to me. Because once again, it had been such a big part of my whole entire life, what I had experienced. I just didn't know how to do it. So when Pat got back a hold of me, I was like, this crazy lady, she's a nut. I love her, but she's such a nut. The first thing out of their mouth was, you're not sick, you're psychic. Okay, yeah, sure I am. So I ended up getting an appointment set with her. And she calls them healings. I didn't really get healed from anything that day. Like I said, I'm a very big skeptic, and there was a lot of stuff happening in my life at that time, and nothing really transformed. But within 3 months, I was crying in the mirror and looking at myself. And I remember saying, Crystal, I can't do this anymore. And so what do you have to lose? Maybe you do have gifts. Maybe you do have things. And I literally started channeling.
I think it would make sense that you could have an experience like that in a solitary confinement area. Because are you familiar with the stone tape theory?
No.
Well, it's a theory of the paranormal that one thing that can cause hauntings is that energies from an area and any emotions, things like that, can somehow get embedded into the surrounding material. And supposedly rock, bricks, those are more able to absorb this energy than something like wood and drywall and such. And the theory is that when enough of this energy builds up, that sometimes it just gets released and it plays back, and that could explain ghost sightings. So, I mean, to me anyway, I think it would make sense. I think it's probably it's definitely an interesting theory of the paranormal and what can cause those types of experiences. I'm not sure scientifically how accurate it is, but I mean, I can imagine if you're in solitary confinement, that'll definitely, there's a lot of emotion involved there. And I could see how that could potentially be stored up in the environment. And then, certain people are more susceptible to experiencing that emotion than others.
Yeah. So I'm goofy because, like I always tell people, everybody asks me, do you know this or do you know this? And I'm like, no, I don't read. I don't care. I just don't. I never have. There are certain things that I've cared about growing up, and there are certain things like Ed and Lorraine Warren. I read their stuff. Like I looked at their case stuff, but it was for different reasons because I didn't believe in it. Didn't believe in their stories. I know people are going to hate me because paranormal people love them. But I didn't agree with their stories. And so I knew those stories. I knew about the Amityville house I was really into as a kid. I was born in 1980. So there are things that that really got me around that time because the 80s were a really cool time for horror. But at the same time, I don't read things. I'm spirit taught. So how spirit teaches me is the only way that I see it. And it's the only way that makes sense to me. I can probably explain most things to a 3-year-old because it's so black and white in how they present it to me, but it's not in line with what historical depiction of spirit is. And so I clash with a lot of paranormal people.
Yeah, I agree with what you were saying about Ed and Lorraine Warren. And I know that's a topic I want to cover someday. It's just I haven't had the time or energy to go in and research an episode. But yeah, I know what you're saying. Some people really, really respect them. And then there's others that view them as little more than frauds or charlatans. And I was born in 1975. So I do have to agree that, yeah, the 80s were 80s, early 90s were a pretty good time for horror films and, some of the stuff that was coming out then. So you mentioned that you did have a mentor that helped you develop your abilities to some extent.
She was a mentor, yes, but she talked to me that one time and then we never talked again. So when I say mentor, she told me that I had gifts and she was like, this is what you need to do with them. And then she just kind of was like, poof. Contacted her, I think, twice after that. And that's why I said I'm spirit taught. I'm not people taught. I call her a mentor because I love her because I think that it coming when it did saved my life. But at the same time, she didn't teach me anything.
Okay. So how did you go about developing your ability to communicate with the spirits? You said that you consider yourself spirit taught.
Mm-hmm. I just channeled. That's it. I just channeled. I just set up appointments and sat at a table and said, here's what I'm getting.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's probably some books on the subject out there, but yeah, it's not something where I don't know how you'd go about, developing those gifts or I suppose some people might consider it more of a curse than a gift. There
are. And I could see how and why. I can. And I try to really help those people understand. It's really not.
Do you consider channeling a gift, a curse, or more just a skill and when I say a skill, it's just kind of neutral. It's not really something that you are happy to have, but you don't hate the fact that you have it.
No, I think it's a big gift. I think it's a gift, and I don't mean gift as in I'm gifted. Look at me. No, that's not what I mean. I mean, I have learned so much, and I have gotten so much, and I have received so much. This makes me emotional because they've saved me. So it's a gift to me. And to be able to give that back to other people and give validation to them, I don't even know what I'm validating. There's so much separate. I don't know people's loved ones. I don't know their family. So to be able to have them connect with me and give me essentially my life back, because that's what Spirit's done, it's a gift to me, as well as it is to the people that I've channeled for.
Yeah, and I can understand that because you mentioned that when you had that first experience at Jackson where you weren't sure it sounded like you weren't sure if there was something mentally wrong with you or you just had this unusual experience, and then being told that, no, you're not crazy. As you said, you're not crazy, you're psychic or you're a medium.
Yeah.
So how would you describe the experience of when you're channeling a spirit?
What do you mean? Because there's a lot that I can answer for that. Do you mean what is it that happens when I'm channeling? It depends on the situation. It depends where I am. It depends. I just had a client right before you, and it's just me sitting in a chair, given what I see, feel, and experience. And most of the time when the channeling experience happens in different forms. If I go into a location, let's say I'm going to somebody's house because they're having a paranormal experience, then it's a completely different setup for me than it is when I'm sitting with a client, because I know when I'm sitting with a client that I'm only speaking to people. I'm only allowing spirit walking in God's white light, not a level 2. Level 2 is just a form of communication, and people take responsibility and accountability for their actions. That's all that means. But when I'm going into a house where there might be somebody experiencing something, then it's completely different, because I have to allow everything to come through so I can get the clarity and the validation for what the homeowners are witnessing and experience through their perception and perspective. Two different things.
Okay. I guess what I was thinking when I came up with that question is, I mean, do you tend to feel more like mental effects, like just more with your head? Do you tend to feel more physical effects like chills in your body or shaking or anything like that?
So I am somebody, like I said, it depends. When I'm sitting with my receiving, it's just a knowing when I'm channeling with people, in clients. It's just a knowing. It just happens. It just is. I repeat. Once again, I don't know how much you know about channeling. So I'm considered a rapid fire medium where I just talk. It just comes out fast. And so there's not much time for people to talk because spirit just tells me what happens. And then it'll be like with the person that I just had, dad came through and talked about his experience. And then grandma came through and talked about her experience. And then her mom came through, who she just lost. And then the rest of the conversation happened. But it was all the things that were taking place. So there's thoughts, feelings, imagery, all playing and taking place. But at the same time, because, and I hate this world, I need to just, God, I hate even saying it. I hate it. Empathic, because it's such a misconstrued word and people don't know the meaning behind it. And I don't feel empathic to people all the time, but I am empathic to spirit. So when they give me things, I'm able to pick up on the emotions and the feelings that they had and they received. So it's two different perspectives taking place at the same time. So I'm able to see through the sitter's experience and how they would have received their loved one passing and what they saw, what they experienced. But I also can flip that, and it's through spirit's perspective and how they see it, how they received it and how they felt it. So it's all of those things happening at once. And then my words just making sense of all the things that are coming through all at the same time.
Now, you mentioned before something like a level 2. So there's like, are there considered like different levels of spiritual experiences?
No, spirit on the other side has different levels, and it's really just where we are in consciousness. It's all it is. It's like I said, layman's terms. It's just, I don't want to talk to if you were somebody I was channeling for, I would not want to channel for somebody who was not going to take responsibility for their actions. Because let's say somebody did you really dirty in life and then they come through and they blame you for what happened to them. There's nothing there that anybody's getting out of that situation that's going to bring anything. And so it's a powerful experience when somebody's been abusive or treated you in a certain way or did something that hurt you, comes through and says, look, I take responsibility. Now let me show you what was going on in my life and why.
Now, you also mentioned you did some paranormal investigation. How did you first get into that?
In 2000, I think it was like 2012, 2013, somebody had seen something of mine. I can't remember actually how they found me. I'm going to be completely honest. I don't know how I was found, but they contacted me and they were like, hey, we're going to this place and we want you to go. It's a place I swear to God, I'm not stupid, but I have no memory. 98-year-old with dementia. But they asked me if I could go to this place that they had been to and investigated several times. So they already knew the history. They knew the owners. They knew the story. And this person that contacted me was, he didn't believe in mediums at all. He was super skeptical and he was like, yeah, whatever. But somebody was like, no, you got to contact her. Seriously. So he did. And I went and he was like, holy crap. Because everything that I was like saying is stuff that like I knew that there was like a fire that took place in the attic and I knew that it was this and then he took me into the attic. I was like, yep, told you so. And it's just like all these people coming through. So that's kind of how that happened to begin with. And then I just kind of I went along with them. I was a part of their team for a really long time, but I don't work for any team. So like it was really good because they wanted to, I don't know, they did house investigations and stuff like that. I'm more of a house investigator because there's purpose behind it. I like the fun stuff. I like the businesses. I like spirit in any form, but I really like more so to do things to help people actually find some closure in their life.
Oh, that's cool. And
so,
for some reason that reminded me of, I don't know, did you ever watch the show Ghost Hunters with TAPS, the Atlantic Paranormal Society? Yeah,
that was actually one of the first paranormal shows I ever watched.
I don't remember if it was Grant or Jason, but one of them was saying people asked, would sometimes ask them why they don't investigate cemeteries. And they're like, well, because everyone's dead. You can't help them. So that's what I thought was cool how you said that. One of the things about investigating houses is you have more potential to actually help someone, since, well, house is a place you live in. And of course you want to feel safe there. And I'd have to say, if there was a house I could have you investigate, it would probably be the house my wife lived in before we got married, because I swear this is probably the closest I've had to a real strong paranormal experience. But whenever you went in the basement of that house, there was always a kind of this creepy feeling, and her dog would never go down there. And part of the wall was like boarded up. I'm sure it was probably something they had to tear it down to get at a pipe or something to replace. But still, it's like, I swear that basement was like the portal to hell.
A lot of people think that.
So if you ever,
man, they do be creepy.
So have you ever investigated any place that you think is a portal to hell?
No, I don't believe in that.
haven't had any experience quite like that, huh?
So I've had bad experiences, yes. I just don't see things that way. So how spirit has taught me, and once again, I got to tell you, I could be talking out my rear end right now. I don't know. I'm just telling you how it's been given to me. That I see how they give it to me are like ley lines. So there are ley lines that cover the earth that have intersections and crosses. But out in the atmosphere, there's also ley lines that are atmospheric. And so when things shift, when the earth turns on its axis in different points in different ways, which is why paranormal activity changes. So, you know, you might have a lot of paranormal activity on the East Coast one year, and then 10 years later, it might be on the West Coast, or it might be mid. It might even be like in Alaska, but it's because the axis of the earth is shifting. And all those points, they have to have a perfect like laser point image that goes between the 2 points. And that creates soft spots. And those soft spots create a different in the energy that can come through or interact with us. And that's why stuff like that happens in more places. I don't see portals that go to realms of anything crazy. That's not how I see it. I've seen people who have, this is where Crystal gets into like the power of our mind. I've seen people who create it with their fear of what that looks like, but that's still not the truth. So spirit can manipulate things to look ways that they're not actually. And then when I get in there, I'm like, yeah, nice try. That's stupid. That doesn't exist. And so let's shut that down right now. And you've got to do your due diligence as a human and stop manifesting that for yourself.
Because I've heard of ley lines and I've heard of them being on the earth, but so the spirits tell you that there's also ley lines like in the sky, in the atmosphere?
The atmosphere. And I'm going to tell you once again, please, I could show people my transcripts from school as proof. I do not know jack squat about anything physics. But my husband, and actually, if you like to talk about this stuff, my husband would be a good person for you to have cool conversations with because he's the nerd. And once this was said, he actually looked into it and it does exist. It's in physics. I don't know what it's called. Don't ask me that. I just know what I see in my head.
You realize now now I'm going to have to do a show about ley lines in the future. And I'll have to have your husband on because
he does deep dives into every single thing that happens. Like whatever I say, he's such, and I say nerd with all the love in the world because we need to have those people who like to do that. That's where validation comes in. But he likes to deep dive into all the things that he hears spirits say because now he's like, now I got to know more. Where did that come from?
Yeah, and hey, I'm a longtime Dungeons and Dragons fan, so hey, I'll always let my geek flag fly.
Absolutely understand.
So you mentioned that you don't really have a specific group you work with. You're considered more of a freelancer, and you shared a video with me, so that I thought this sounded like a really interesting experience. You had worked. You stressed that you didn't work for them, but you've actually worked with the Winchester Mystery House.
Yes. So they would call me if they had people. So I didn't work well with them. And I'm going to say, this is where, so people who have spooky places, mystery house, it's the mystery house. They want it to remain a mystery. Okay. And spirit takes away the mystery through me. Nothing through me is going to be sideshow. It's historical. It's facts. It's spirit. They have a story. They're just like humans. Let's talk. So when I say I didn't work well with them, I mean that they had called me several times to do seances for party. I'm like, I don't do seances. You are never going to see this girl dressed up in anything pretending that spirit is shaking tables, because to me, that is an ugly depiction of something that I'm trying to change and how people see and receive spirit, because spirit can help us in so many areas of life. They've changed my whole world for the positive. And so when I say I didn't work with them, they were the greatest people ever. They have a job, they have an image, they have a business that they have to run. There was nothing wrong with what they did. And there were people that would call them and say, we need this and we want this for a wedding or a party or something. And I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I don't do tarot. I don't do psychic stuff. I don't do that. I'm not the right fit for you there.
I found it interesting you mentioned seances. I live in Appleton, and Harry Houdini, he actually lived in Appleton for a while, and down at our local historical center, they actually have an exhibit about seances because he Houdini did actually try to debunk these, and so there's an exhibit that shows you like some of the tricks and some of the things they would do to make it look like the table was shaking or something was moving. So yeah, if you're ever in the Appleton area, and definitely stop by the Appleton Historical Society. It's an interesting exhibit.
Yeah, Houdini and I probably wouldn't have gotten along very well, but he was a cool dude.
Yeah.
I understand.
Can you give us a little bit of background about the Winchester Mystery House for anyone out there who hasn't heard of it or maybe doesn't know much about the history of it?
So I'm horrible with the history of it because the only history I know is the history that I was told. And I'm going to say, like, I'll tell you the history based on what I knew going into the location. So it was a lady, Sarah Winchester, who built a house after her husband died. This is where it gets shady for me because I don't pay attention. I didn't know she had a daughter. I thought she just had a husband. I thought she lost her husband. I didn't know there was a daughter involved, but she lost her husband. And then she started building this house because she thought, because her husband was like the Winchester guns or whatever, she had the money tied to that. So she thought that she was cursed because the medium or a psychic or somebody told her that she was cursed and that all these ghosts that had been killed by all these weapons were going to come after her and take her off this planet. And so she needed to build a freaking house to nowhere, and just keep creating. And so I was like, that makes no sense at all. Once again, this is one of those stories that makes no sense at all. She definitely is eccentric. I'll give her that. But the history on that is essentially that a psychic, she had a meeting with a psychic. She was in a state of sorrow after she lost her husband, and she was told that ruin was going to come upon her and everything. She was going to lose everything and all this other stuff. And that's kind of the story that I know, historically speaking. That is not the story that Spirit shared with me.
Yeah, because I had heard that story about how she was told that she had to keep building, which is why the architecture there is so weird with like doors that drop off outside and stairs to nowhere and doors that open to walls. So you said the spirits, though, actually told you something different.
Yes. So I went there. I can't remember if it was in 2021 or 2022. I don't know. I sent the post to you. I'd have to look at it. But I went there for a tour because my husband had gotten a job in California. So we moved from Michigan to California. And so while we were there, we went on a tour of the Winchester Mystery House. And so it was just one of those situations. I was so excited because I get to go in and see the Winchester house. I thought that it was going to be just a cool visit. Nope, it wasn't. As soon as I walked into the carriage room at the start of the tour, I was met with an old, and she wasn't an old lady. She was actually very young, but she was a housekeeper. And she was like, I've got stuff to tell you. And I was like, whoa, okay, here we go. And then she was like, no, you have to follow me. I'm in a tour. I can't leave the tour and just walk through the Winchester Mystery House without anybody guiding me. And I'm like, lady, I can't do that. I can't follow you. Like, I can't do this right now. So I got as far, you go in and you're in what actually used to be the carriage house. And then they take you off to the right and then into what they called like the Tiffany window room. That was when I was done. I said, I can't do this. I've got to leave because I looked at my husband, I said, if I stay here, I'm going to take over this tour. And the stuff that this woman wants to tell me has nothing to do with the actual history of the house, the way that they're talking about the history of the house. And so I exited and I went and I waited for like an hour and a half in the gift shop, just twiddling my thumbs, waiting for my husband and my two sons to arrive back to me while I listened to this story. And the first time I heard the ley line thing, that's actually where it came from. And the reason she told me that she built some of the houses or some of the rooms in the area that she built the rooms, because this is the coolest part. Like, first off, Sarah wasn't a crazy person. She wasn't a nut at all. She was just a really broken woman who lost the love of her life and her child, and it caused her tremendous grief. But, and I don't know what you know about Sarah Winchester, but this was something cool that I learned because I knew none of this stuff. That because she was a woman, after her husband passed, all of the men who worked in the company tried to get her taken out of the company. They tried to get her in an insane asylum and say that she was crazy.
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah, I didn't know that either, not till Spirit told me. And it was funny because like I ended up going back for a second tour because they saw my post on Instagram and they were like, interesting, because they have diaries. So anyway, so I'm sitting there and they're talking about how when she built some of these rooms, the reason she built the rooms was really to give safe haven for Spirit. She herself was a gifted person. She was a nut, just like me. I'm going to say I'm a little bit weird and eccentric. So was she. She felt things, understood things, and experienced things that most people didn't. She wanted to do her best to try to give safe haven because she herself doubted that her husband and her daughter made it safe to the other side. And so if they didn't, she wanted to give them a safe place to go and all of the people around there. That's how it was depicted to me. However, there are rooms in the house, and this was not validated. However, once again, a lot of stuff wasn't validated, and I know why, but all I have to go by is the faces that were made when I said it during the tour with the people, okay? Some of the rooms are replicas of places that her and her husband went and visited in the time that they came because it was such an important part to her. So some of the houses are replications. Some of them have nothing to do with her at all, but some of them have to do with the energy that she was trying to give in the space. So you would have positive energy spaces and you would have negative energy spaces. And she wanted to keep them separate as to not cross them, which is why everything looks so crazy and cattywampus in the house. That's why that happened, because she herself didn't want her loved ones crossing or interacting with some of these other negative energy spirits that she herself felt and received. So that's how it was given to me. Now, when it comes to the craziness and why she kept on building in that house, she almost made me feel like at some point it became a game. It was just like, you guys want to say I'm crazy? Then fine, I'll be crazy. I'll do what I can. Because the people, she also owned railroads, which I also didn't know. She owned like stock and rail. And so a lot of her money came from that as well. And she had lawyers constantly coming after her and trying to take her money from her and trying to do all these things because she was a crazy woman and they didn't want her to have money and have a spot as a CEO in these businesses. And so she played on that. She said, fine, you want to say I'm crazy? Let's be crazy. And she turned into that. Now, it wasn't until I went to the video that I showed you that I had, because when I was there, I can't remember, they didn't have the key to the safe or something. I can't remember what it was when I went to the tour, but she had told me that she kept the most important things to her in the safe and it wasn't money. That was what I received. And so when I went back and I was on the Sam and Colby episode, I walked in there and they were asking me what was in the safe. And I was like, well, she told me, she didn't tell me what was in the safe, but she told me the only thing that was important to her in her life was kept in that safe. It wasn't money. It was a lock of her daughter's hair and it was her death certificate for both her daughter and her husband. So that's all she kept in the safe. The money, she didn't care about the money. The house went to the state, I do believe, because she didn't give a crap about the house. She didn't give a crap about anything. The only person that ended up getting anything from her was I think it was her niece. I could be wrong because once again, I don't really know the history. I just know what I was told. I think it was her niece that lived with her throughout this whole entire time, but she gave her the furniture. That's it. Everything else, she said, I don't care. I don't care what happens to it.
Yeah, that's interesting that how you said that she did it more as a way to make it a safe place for spirit as opposed to trying to make it a maze so they couldn't catch her. Because the common story, about how her building it so the ghosts of the dead don't get hers probably makes a better story for the tourists. So, but that's interesting. Yeah.
So one of the coolest things that, once again, I said, the reason why I brought up the diary was because there were a couple things that were given to me validation wise while I was in that tour, the second tour that I took. There was this one part that she was telling me. This was Sarah actually channeling to me. This wasn't when I went back for the second one, I had actual Sarah there giving me stuff. And that woman, I'm telling you, like her energy, she was a no nonsense human being. She didn't take crap from people. She was somebody who was very pointed in how she communicated and definitely probably would have looked to men very intimidating because she was not going to be walked on at all. And she was so proud to tell me of this one story. that she had while building this house, and how this one guy, this one builder, this construction worker, I don't know what they're called, contractor, that was working with her, because she changed contractors frequently. She didn't have the same contractor. And so this one contractor came in and she told him what she wanted. And he said no. And she had to go in and she fired him on the spot because she was not going to allow a man to tell her what she could have and try to take over something that was hers, because that's not how it was going to go to her. And she sent me into the house and she showed me like where everything happened and how she cause he tried to sue her after the fact. Like it was a whole to do, I guess. And she was so proud to tell me that she stood up for herself, because it was really just her depiction of this was her navigating after her husband passed all of these people who just essentially wanted her husband's money. And it made her mad, because you're not going to use us and use him that way. And that's how she gave it to me.
Well, that's cool. Cause yeah, I mean, I'm sure, I don't know the exact era that she lived, but women had very different roles and expectations in society back then. So she definitely sounds like the kind of woman who wasn't afraid to stand up to her for herself and, take no crap kind of person.
Yeah, it was very interesting. I was like, my gosh, she was alive well before her time. Because, now you see women who act like that and can run companies and do all these things. And people are kind of like, they still have opinions. But most of the time, I can't even imagine what it was like for her being alive back in that day. And I always tell people, they're like, so are you saying that none of this is true? I'm saying, no, I don't know, because first off, I'm just somebody who's talking to invisible people in my head, first off. But at the same time, I'm going to say, based on what I received, I think that there was some truth to the fact that she did create this house for spirit in ways that most people can't understand. Would I do it? No. I'm a medium and I still wouldn't waste my money and my time. And I think she really just wanted to spend as much of the money as she possibly could on absolute nonsense, just so it didn't get in the hands of these a-holes. Yeah. That's how I think. But at the same time, I do not think she was running through this house scared for her life every single night. Did she do weird, eccentric things? Yes, she did. She also told me that, there's a part in the house that they take you that they say was the original, seance room. And the way she gave it to me, that wasn't the seance room. She took me to, this widow's peak that I don't think is there anymore. I think it got ruined in one of the earthquakes. But where they say the seance spaces, and this is what I think is always goofy. This is why I say I'm like a different medium, because when I go in after TV mediums and stuff like that, and everybody goes in and this is that realm I'm getting into, people hate me for. But when I go in, my stories are very different. And so, one, I always tell people to take everything that they see and receive with a complete grain of salt. And I tell them that if somebody's just replaying and repeating the same tired messages that they've seen on TV and heard on the news, that's probably not real. And you can probably throw it out the window, because I don't care who you are. Nothing happens the way it's depicted after the fact. There's always different truths involved. And so let's say somebody came into my house right now and offed me. Okay. What people saw in the news would be what they came into after the fact, right? What my depiction would be as spirit would be what happened while I was sitting here when that happened, and what happened after the fact. There are different situations and scenarios that take place, and the details matter.
Yep.
So I always am baffled why every medium has the same story but me. It never makes sense to me how people can go in. And I think that that's it's a good thing to never take anything that people say at face value, because that's going to be what your brain makes a picture out of.
I wonder if it's because they're afraid to stir the pot, so to speak. They want to stick with established narratives because they think maybe that will make them seem more genuine, because just a guess, of course, but maybe if they do start saying different stories, that people might think, oh, you don't agree with these other 9 psychics or mediums, so therefore, you must be wrong, when it's like, well, maybe you just have had a different experience or had a different way of viewing things.
Yes. So I guess like in a way, in the medium world, I'm kind of Sarah Winchester. I'm building my house to nowhere with my crazy narratives.
So it sounds like you have done some interesting investigations. Do you have like a dream list of places that you wish you could investigate?
The Dow Island. Dow Island. And I think it's in Mexico.
Oh, okay, I know what you're talking. Is it in Japan or?
No, I think it's in Mexico.
Okay, I know what you're talking about. I just can't. Yeah, you're right. I think it is in Mexico. Yeah, I remember hearing about that place.
So one, I hate dolls. They terrify me. I've always been scared of dolls. I freaking hate them. And so, but I'm just like, I don't believe the story. Every place that I want to go comes with the thought process of that's not true. That's not true. And so my curiosity wants to know the truth. I want spirit to tell me the truth, because one of the things that I hate, I absolutely loathe when people tell me their truth when it comes to spirit. Now, obviously, if I'm in conflict, please tell me your truth, because if I've done you dirty, I will admit that I did, or I'll apologize. It's different. I'm talking about dead people here. But I hate it when people give me a narrative before I walk into a space, because your narrative means jack squat to me. And it's not because I don't care. And it's not because I'm not empathic. And I'm not even saying that your experience didn't happen the way that it did. I'm just saying that you don't know how not to be manipulated by spirit. And just because you saw a demon doesn't make it a demon. It's probably some angry person that's manipulating their energy and trying to scare the crap out of you for some reason on the other side. It's not a demon. I swear 9 times out of 10, it's never a demon. And so I hate narratives going into places. I want spirit to tell me. I want them to tell me their perspective. It's like listening to 2 stories and then coming in the middle and being the mediator between the 2 people. I love the gossip. So spirit will go in and they'll be like, this is all I did. I don't know why the heck that happened. And I'm so sorry if that's how it came off. And then I'll tell people and they'll be like, oh my gosh, that is what happened. But this is, and I'm like, yeah, I know, but you don't know how to receive it. And we don't understand how much our brain plays into what we see and receive around us. Our brain will turn anything into something.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because, as people, we're always trying to find meaning for everything. And whether it's, okay, I was taking a walk yesterday and I saw a couple of crows in a tree. Is there meaning to that? Or I was walking by my neighbor's house and the dog was barking at me. Is there some sort of meaning behind that? So, yeah, I think it's just a very basic human need to want to try to understand or think that there's some deeper meaning in events that seem out of the ordinary, or maybe not out of the ordinary, but just seem like they're happening at weird times. So
I don't know how many places you know of that are haunted. There's we can say Sally's house. Okay. Mm-hmm. So let's say that somebody goes to Sally's house. They have the exact same experience that other people had. Why? Because you knew going into it that would be your experience. So your brain created that experience for you.
Yeah, that's a good point. So it sounds cool that though, when you go into a place, you don't want to know the stories because you don't want, so it sounds like you don't want that to color your perceptions and interfere with what you're receiving.
Yep. I want the truth based on what spirit has to say. People think that my client is the human. It's not, it's spirit. To me, spirit is the client because they're the ones that are living in this space, not being listened to. And it's difficult. I'm not knocking people who are fearful in situations. I've been fearful too. I'll tell you some of those stories if you ever wanted to know those. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I'm saying that you have to sit with yourself and your own fears in order to peel the layers back to get to the internal truth of what's actually taking place. Because let's say a toddler is sitting in front of you right now and they're just screaming and crying for no reason. Now, they're just a brat, right? No, they're not. They're a kid that's going through something in their life and they need you to peel back the layers and be the emotionally, mentally stable one in the situation to get to what's bothering them. Why are you acting this way? What is going on that's causing you to be this way? And so when I go into places, that's my job. My job is to peel the layers. Okay, I see that you're trying to scare me. Now tell me why. Mm-hmm. Tell me why. Okay, you can come at me all you want, but I'm going to make you stop. Knock it off. You're not that scary. Tell me why. And sometimes I'll sit in the space for an hour just pushing things back. Don't touch me. Don't do that. It's just boundaries. They've not had boundaries for a very long time, and they've utilized their energy in manipulative ways to push people away for so long that that's what they're used to doing. But the more you sit there and say, stop that, I'm not playing your game, you're playing mine now, the more you'll peel those layers back, and they're going to lose focus enough to where I can see the internal truth of who and what happened to them in life, whether it be good, bad, or ugly. It doesn't matter. My job isn't to judge their story. My job is to help them so they can cross over and they can be happy.
So do you see yourself as helping people who have ghost problems or helping ghosts that have people problems?
I feel like it's helping ghosts that have people problems.
Or a little bit of both.
I mean, it's like a little bit of both, yes, because, and there's so much teaching that goes in this. I don't just go in and like do my own thing and then leave and be like, this place is clean. That's not how I handle things. I will tell people what I did, what I saw, how I did it. I will let them know that if it happens again, this is what you need to see, feel, understand, because people need to understand that spirit speaks through thoughts, feelings, emotions, and their ego. That's how they talk. And so if you are uncomfortable dealing with thoughts, feelings, emotions, and your own ego, you are going to struggle in communication with spirit because they're utilizing your own fears, lacks, self-doubt, lack of self-confidence, and anything else that's ever dramas that have happened in your life. They're tapping into your subconscious bank and they're pulling those to the surface to push you away and push your buttons.
What would you say was probably the most terrifying experience you've had while doing your investigations?
It was the most terrifying and the best experience of my life. Okay. So like, it was the goofiest thing. Looking back on this, it's like, I just love this man so much and everybody's going to be like, what? Because he was such a bad guy, but he taught me so much. This was when I first started out. I was probably 2013-ish. So I was just learning how to do things. And, I'm going in these places and beforehand, I usually pick up on things prior to going to a location. Like I'll pick up on certain energies. I'll pick up on what I need. The people in my head, I call them my team. They'll tell me things that are about to take place or give me little imagery and stuff like that. So I knew going into this that this was going to be a crap experience for me. And I knew that what I was walking into was bad. So this is so stupid looking back on it now. I'm not religious. I'm not Catholic. I took a rosary with me for what? I don't know. And for good measure, I also took crystals. Why? I don't know. I don't mess with crystals. I don't do crystals. I am crystal. I don't do crystals. But anyway, I stuffed my pockets as full as they possibly could because I was like, I need protection. Dumbest thing I could have ever done. So I walked into this house and it's like a house that they bought and were flipping for their child. It was a small house, but the person who lived there prior to was a hoarder. And they had a mentally challenged son that they took care of who was an adult. So this lady was like really overweight. She couldn't take care of the space, whatever. She ended up having a heart attack on the floor and passing. Okay. But they came in and they took all the crap out of the house and they started doing stuff and energy, just like things bad were happening in that house. The wife couldn't walk into the house without being attacked. Like she was really getting physically attacked in this house. I went into the house and the very first thing that I saw, I didn't see it the way that it was. I saw it the way that it used to be. So before they came in and tore walls down and stuff like that, like I was like, whoa, what's going on here? And I saw this dead lady laying on the floor, rotting in the middle of the floor. And then I saw this man come rushing at me from the living room. And before I go further, I need to make sure people understand. When I say that things happen to me, there is an energetic crystal and there is a physical crystal. When I say things happen, it's energetically happening to me, but because energy is the way it is with me, it feels like it is actually physically happening. Okay, this is where your brain takes place, because if you've ever had a paranormal experience, you'll know what I'm talking about. Things feel certain death, but they're not, because it's not really happening. It's an invisible human. So this guy bum rushes me and he grabs a hold of my heart and I couldn't breathe. My heart felt like I was having a heart attack. And all of a sudden I got really flushed and I was like, what the hell? And so I'm sitting there and he's like, I did it to her and I will do it to you too. I've told them I want you to go. And then poof, he's just gone. I'm standing there like, what in God's green earth is happening in this house? So we get on with the night, and actually this is probably maybe 45 minutes into this investigation. We went upstairs, and this, I can't even tell you, like the house is so small. So the stairs go up into this lofty area, and we were sitting up there next to the wall, and then he's like sitting in the corner just staring at me. And I'm like, dude, what is wrong with you? Couldn't get him to talk. He's just smirking. He goes, did they tell you they found my tools? And I'm like, what the hell? So I'm like, I go, did you guys find tools? Did you find a tool? Did you find something? And then he showed me a knife. And I was like, so you found a knife in the wall? And they were like, yeah. How did you know? And I was like, okay. So it was wrapped with with children's drawings. And it was handmade. So it had a handmade sheath and stuff like that went with it. And it was all rusted, and it's this big, huge knife. And I'm like, okay, so yay. And he goes, yeah, those are my tools. And I'm like, what do you mean your tools? And when I say that I'm talking to him, it's in my head. It's not happening out loud. They can't hear what's happening. So I'm like, what's going on? Like, tell me more. And came to his communication that he had murdered girls back in, I want to say, the late 1800s, early 1900s, because this was out in the middle of a field, this house. It was in the middle of absolutely nowhere. But how he showed it to me was that house obviously never existed at this point in time. But he showed me that their family had a cluster of cabins. There were 2 or 3 cabins where different family members lived on the same big property between each other. And so what he showed me was that in that time, what he would do is he would take girls to some of these cabins, and he would murder them, kill them, and bury them on the property. And I'm like, what the crap? So he ends up coming at me, and I can't remember, this is, like I said, 2013, but he ended up coming after me in that moment in time. I told them what I saw. They showed me the knife that he had put in the walls. And I don't know how that knife was put in the walls because it wasn't him, obviously.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know who found it. I don't know what it did. I don't know where it came from. He could have been lying through his teeth. I don't know. But at the same time, he gutted me with this knife. And he said, that's what I did. And when I channel in certain situations, I do what's called remote viewing. So when I do remote viewing, I'm standing in the person that I'm channeling for. So I'm standing there essentially gutting myself, and I could feel him cutting up into my sternum. And I was like, I've got to leave. I can't be here. I was angry. I was so angry. I was mad. I was feeling all sorts of emotions, all sorts of feelings. I was livid. I can't tell you in words what I was because it would require lots of words that you can't have on this podcast. But I was so angry. I was angry that I was in that situation because I was told that I would be protected by my team. I was told that I would never have to go through, I looked at protection in a different way in my eyes as a human being. And when I got outside, I had a come to Jesus moment with my team, and I was yelling at them and telling them what piss poor job they're doing in my life because what the heck, you weren't there. I'm spraying myself with sage because once again, why not? Sage is going to help, right? Did not help. Anywho, I ended up standing out there, and there was another team member that was out there, and we heard 2 women screaming in the woods. So he was like, whoa, because that was something that kind of played back and forth with what he just said. And it sounded like a woman was literally being murdered out in the woods.
Wow.
So we thought that was really cool that we got that on tape because obviously it wasn't really happening. Nobody was out there. There were no houses. It was just us. So we went back in the house. I took a really big minute, because once again, I was bitter at this point and I was done with my life and I wanted to go home because I thought that God did not like me, protect me. And here you go again. I was angry. So I went back in the house, and this joker comes out of nowhere, and he looks at me and he says, I told you in the beginning, I forgot this part. I'm sorry. When he did the heart thing, he said something to me. He said, you don't have faith, and by the end of the night, I'm going to show you why. That's when it clicked, because he came back at me and he said, I told you you didn't have faith. You carry your faith in a pocket. I can do whatever I want to you. I was like, oh my freaking God. It clicked with me that if I go into places, I have to believe that I am the protection. The protection can't be carried with you. You can't have fear. You always have to have some form of faith and protection that you know you are that light that needs to be given in those moments. And from that moment on, first off, I'm so grateful for him because I think he knew what was coming. And what ended up coming after the fact, about an hour after that, I didn't see him again until about an hour afterwards, where I saw him messing with one of my team members. And this was actually a really hard situation for the team member that I was with. It was him and his wife. They worked on the team together. And he was downstairs. We were all upstairs. He was the only one downstairs in the kitchen at the time. And he heard somebody whispering in his ear to kill his wife. And he started seeing him killing his wife when they got home. Oh, wow. And how he was going to do it. And it really got to him. Like, it really tormented him. But I was upstairs with his wife and I could hear the conversation happening. And I knew what was going on downstairs. I knew what he was telling him. And so I was like, dude, you need to remove yourself from the house because this is what's going on and this is what's being said. And in that moment, he once again met me upstairs and he's like, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do? And he kept pushing and poking me. Well, in that moment, once again, this is where that faith comes in and being able to do things. I saw him as a 3-year-old boy being put into a cellar in a cabin in the middle of winter naked. And it was dark and he was crying and he was shoved in there and his mom was his tormentor. She would beat him. She wouldn't feed him. She would do tons of things to him in abusive ways. And he was stuck in this place. So my guides essentially peeled back those layers instantaneously for me to be able to see where he was in his vulnerable state of life. And from that point on, there was no fear. How can you fear a 3-year-old boy who's I have to meet that with empathy. I can't not see that without empathy, without love, without, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. I just wanted the situation that I saw had me in tears because it felt like it lasted forever. But to see what was going on and to feel his feelings at the same time was such a hard thing for me because I was like, it doesn't make any sense for somebody to abuse people after being abused. But at the same time, he was so scared and he was so alone and he was so cold and he was so broken. And then I just felt bad for him. And after that, I couldn't see him the same way because it took all fear away from what he was presenting himself with. And that was essentially the catalyst of how I see and receive and respond to spirit. Because I know there's always something behind the mask that they're portraying, just like broken human beings. Human beings who are alive turn themselves into monsters because of their experience. It's not because they're monsters. It's because we experience life and life is hard and some people struggle so much with it that they don't know how to not be what they see themselves as being. And so we can always manifest what we want to be. And sometimes that's that. And after that, I was able to actually get to a point where I could clear the space. I don't want to say clear the space and like cross him over in that moment because it needed more time. He needed more time because he was a tough cookie. But at the same time, the family ended up being able to stay in the house eventually. It was like 6 months after the fact, and there was no more craziness that was afoot. But that was one of the most beautiful experiences I've had in my life. And I thank him so much because without him and that situation and what he taught me about myself, I would not be who I am today and be able to see and receive spirit the way that I see and receive spirit and help them the way that I do. So as traumatizing as it was still the most beautiful thing that happened to me specifically.
Now, the story that you told there, is this something that's like local knowledge around the area where this house was, or? Nope.
Nobody knew who the heck this guy was. Nobody knew him. There were cabins on this property though. And it was goofy because I got there at night. Like when I got there, we're talking like 9, 10 o'clock at night. So it was already dark when I got there. I don't know. It was literally like, it was acres of land. There's no way I could have known it was wooded property, but they were like, yeah, that tracks. There's some stuff out there. And then he talked about a cemetery. He talked about all sorts of stuff in the area that gave validation for where it was.
those are all the questions I have for now. So before we go, do you have any like a website or like any social media links or information you want to share?
I'm Crystal Jordan. I have a company. It's called Strong Roots Mediumship, LLC. So if you want to find me, you can find me. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram. I've got a private group on Facebook because I share things with people and I let them share personal things and stuff like that. So I keep it private for safety purposes. But other than that you can find me if you want to look for me. Well, I'm not that hard to find. I'm sure you can sleuth me out here.
Well, I'd like to thank you for joining me today and taking some time out of your day to talk to me about your experiences. So until next time, everyone, stay strange and stay interesting. You have been listening to a presentation of Point of Insanity Game Studio. Visit us on the web at www.poigamestudio.com. Follow me on most social media sites at POI Game Studio, and check out my music channel on YouTube at Al Seeger Music.